Let's start this week's edition of the NFL Rearview Mirror Show with a quick look at how things have been going from a point spread perspective. Because, guys, it's all cyclical. I don't care what sport we're talking about. 3 weeks ago, the sports books were making a ton of money because the underdogs were barking loud and proud, going 9-5 against the spread with 8 outright victories by the Puppies, which, remember, when underdogs are not only covering, but they're winning the game outright, well, that means a lot of guys that are betting teasers are getting hammered as well. Then the favorites bounced back 2 weeks ago, and they go 10-4 versus the number. Now, this week, the underdogs were 7-8-1 against the spread, but that's a very fluid number depending on when you bought some of the games and whether or not you bought insurance on some of them. But a couple of the dogs snuck through the back door. It started with Washington on Thanksgiving Day against Dallas. You had Carolina sneaking through the back door. Chicago as well. Hell, the Bears were in position to win the damn game after Tennessee coughed up a 24-7 lead against them. You had Miami pushing, but hey, could have been a win, could have been a push, could have been a loss, depending on which side you were on the game, when you bought the number, whether you bought the insurance on the game. You had the Chiefs pulling the overtime upset in Denver. So again, that number 7-8-1 could have been 8-7-1. It could have been, right near 500. It's a fluid number. Let's start with a review of this weekend's past games, and why not start with the Monday night game when Philadelphia found itself taking the field with a huge overhaul of its offensive line because starting guard Brandon Brooks was ruled out of the game prior to the start of the contest, which means Philadelphia had 3 different guys starting at different positions along that offensive line. And it showed because the Eagles were unable to start running the ball. That's what made them so successful in their prior home game, keeping Matt Ryan and the Falcons at bay, keeping their offense on the sideline. And that was their game plan going in, established run against Green Bay, keeping Aaron Rodgers on the sideline. Well, it obviously didn't work. And things only went from bad to worse for Philadelphia when a Philadelphia wide receiver core, which is awful, lost its only viable receiver when Wes Matthews got hurt in the contest. Again, things went bad to worse, and the Packers ended up winning the game 27-13. So a Philadelphia team that had been okay this season managed just 13 points against a Packers team that had allowed 30 or more points, in 4 straight games, had allowed at least 40 points in 2 straight games. And what can I say? Packers in that contest, 387 total yards, 35 minutes time of possession, 10 for 14 on third down situations. So the Eagles fall to 4-1 straight up and against the spread at home. They had outscored their first 4 foes at home, 108-38, and covering all 4 of those games. Packers, meanwhile, just 4-8-1 against the spread their last 13 regular season games. They win for only the second time in their last 7 games straight up, and their streak of 4 straight overs come to an end. Meanwhile, the Eagles, after that fast 3-0 start this season, have now lost 6 of their last 8. Packers, though, we will give them credit for a cover as a road dog, but they're still only 3-9 against the spread their last 12 as a puppy on the highway getting points. Going back to the Sunday games, the Jets continued their mastery in Vegas against the Patriots as they are now 6-0-1 against the spread in their last 7 meetings with the Patriots, who needed to rally for that 22-17 win. Tom Brady playing on a balky knee, threw the ball 50 times in that game, completed 30 passes for 286 yards and 2 touchdowns. He now has 18 TD passes versus just 1 interception in the 7 games back, and the Patriots have won 6 of them and have covered in 5 of them. But the Patriots struggled offensively in that game, just 4 for 14 on third down plays. The Denver failure at home against Kansas City in a 30-27 overtime loss. Chiefs have now won 18 of their last 21 regular season games, but still some sticky points for that Kansas City defense because they allowed Denver to gain 464 yards in 77 plays after being unable to get off the field the prior week in a home loss to Tampa Bay, in which the Chiefs defense allowed the Buccaneers to run 74 plays for 442 yards. Trevor Siemian had a nice game for Denver in that game, 20 for 34, 368 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he was sacked 5 times. Denver falling to 9-3 against the spread the last 12 games, coming off a bye. Meanwhile, the under now 8-3-1 the last 11 in the series as that one soared over the posted price. Oakland collapsing 24-7 lead at halftime against Carolina, coming back to win that game 35-32 on a short week. Still, the Raiders have won 5 straight and 8 of their last 9. Panthers, meanwhile, 1-4-1 against the spread their last 6 on the road, 4-9 against the spread their last 13 games overall as they sneak in the back door. Seattle, total epic collapse at Tampa Bay. You know, a Seahawks offense that had scored 31, 31, and 26 points in the 3 prior games. Manages just 5 at Tampa in this one. Russell Wilson, who had been on quite a roll his previous 3 games during that stretch where they had scored all those points, was 63 for 94 for 892 yards and 6 touchdowns. But in the game at Tampa, giving no protection by his offensive line, 17 for 33, 2 interceptions, 151 yards, sacked 6 times, and he ended up, because he was constantly on the run, being their leading ball carrier with 8 carries for 80 yards. As I noted going into that game in last week's show, I thought one of the problems for Seattle was going to be the loss of running back C.J. Prosise, who really had rejuvenated that Seattle ground game with that great game against New England. But in the Philadelphia win 2 weeks ago, he suffered a shoulder injury that's going to keep him on the shelf indefinitely, and I think that definitely showed. Now, despite the loss, Seattle was still 18-4 straight up and 16-6 against the spread in regular season action in November going forward the past 3 years. But Seattle was also shorthanded in that contest. Their starting center was hurt. Earl Thomas missed the game after starting 118, and starting defensive end Michael Bennett missed his 5th straight game as well. Excuse me, guys. I'm getting all choked up talking about the results of these contests. New Orleans, my best bet on Sunday, rolled 49-21 at home against the LA Rams. But remember, guys, it was a 28-21 game at halftime before the Saints pitched a 21-0 shutout in the second half. Drew Brees, another big game, 28 for 36, 310 yards, 4 touchdowns. Mark Ingram having perhaps his best game of the season. 14 carries, 146 yards. Saints once again running the ball efficiently, 209 total yards rushing. And the Rams came into that game with a pretty damn good rushing defense. Saints outgained them 555 total yards to 247. They had the ball for a little over 36 minutes as they covered for the 7th time in their last 8 games. Good defensive effort by them. Remember, the week prior in the Thursday night loss at Carolina, they held the Panthers to 223 yards. Held the Rams to 247. Meanwhile, the Rams 2 for 13 on 3rd down situations in that loss at home to the Dolphins the week prior. Well, here they weren't much better. 2 for 10 on 3rd down situations, even though the rookie, Jared Goff, threw his first 3 touchdown passes of the season. Miami gets the job done, wins 31-24 at home against San Francisco, a game in which the Dolphins were up 31-14 midway through the 4th quarter before another team sneaks through the back door, those being the 49ers. Still, the Dolphins win their 6th straight game, but surprisingly in this contest, they were unable to run the ball. But it's not really a surprise because the 49ers come in here with the number 32 rushing defense. There's only 32 teams in the league. They're dead last. But Jay Ajayi only 18 carries for 45 yards in that contest against a Miami stop unit that was giving up 180 yards a game. Problem is, Dolphins, their offensive line, Brandon Albert was out. Starting center, Mike Pouncey was out. Their starting left guard, Larry Tunsil, was out. 3 starting offensive linemen gone. That's why they couldn't open any holes. So Ryan Tannehill stepped up with one of his best games, 20 for 30, 285 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game for the Dolphins to prevail. By the way, Colin Kaepernick actually played well. Although he was stopped in the Miami 2 as the game ended, 29 for 46, 296 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air. Also ran the ball for 113 yards and 10 carries. San Francisco 475 total yards in that game against the Miami defense. Atlanta wins at home 38-19 against Atlanta, or against Arizona. Arizona 4 for 11 on 3rd downs, only 332 yards, 8 penalties, 60 yards. They've lost 2 in a row, 3 of their last 4. Carson Palmer continues to struggle on the road. In 4 road starts, the Cardinals are 0-4 this season in Palmer's numbers. 7 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and sacked 19 times in losses to the Bills, the Panthers, the Vikings, and the Falcons. Ironically, the only time the Cardinals have won on the road this season is the game that Palmer was out with a concussion against San Francisco. The Cardinals have now failed to cover 9 of their last 12 games. Atlanta now 9-2 over this year. And surprisingly, the Falcons covered as a favorite. They don't do that too often. 4-12 their last 16 laying points. They're a much better play as an underdog, going 9-2 their last 11. As a puppy, they now host Kansas City this week. The only team left on their schedule this season with a winning record. Gave you Baltimore as a free pick on Sunday, and the Ravens snapped a 5-game slide against Cincinnati, winning 19-14. Not a game that had much offense. The Bengals only had 325 yards. The Ravens had 311. Both teams were 5 for 16 on third down plays. Ravens also 8 penalties for 69 yards. Problem with the Bengals, 1 for 5 in the red zone. You think they missed A.J. Green in that contest? Bengals 1-5-1 their last 7 games straight up, 1-5 straight up on the road this season, 2-9 against the odds makers. And you have to say anything more? Oh, yeah, Marvin Lewis should be fired. Last win coming against Cleveland, middle of October. Tennessee up big, 27-7 in the fourth quarter, and they allow Matt Barkley, look like the second coming of Joe Montana and Joe Namath combined. Barkley, 28 for 54, 316 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a couple of costly drops by his receivers, who really cost the Bears a chance to win that game outright. Bears 4-9 against the spread their last 13 games at home, 4-12 their last 16 versus the odds makers, no matter the location. The Titans, Marcus Mariota continued his good play, 290 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he was sacked 5 times, 21 touchdowns, 3 interceptions in his last 8 games. Again, the Titans hurt themselves with the penalties. In the Indianapolis loss, they had 11 flags against them for 109 yards. In the Chicago game, only 6 infractions, but 118 yards, moving them back on the field. Just stupid calls. Titans have gone over in 8 of their last 9, 12 of their last 15 games. The Giants managed a 27-13 win at Cleveland for their 6th straight win. Eli Manning had 3 touchdown passes, but listen, the Browns outgained them, 343-296. Cleveland, 3 for 14 on third downs. The Giants, 4 for 13 on third downs. This was not an offensive fireworks game. Giants, 9 penalties, 100 yards in that game. Oh, by the way, the Browns have lost 15 in a row and 30 of 33. Need we say more? Chargers handed the Houston Texans their first home loss straight up and against the spread this season, 21-13. Thanks to Brock Osweiler's 3 interceptions. Phillip Rivers. Yeah, thanks, Phillip. Last time I bet on you 3 weeks ago, you throw 4 interceptions, you lose at home against the Dolphins. This time at Houston, you go 22 for 30, 3 touchdowns. Both teams awful on third downs, 4 for 11, each of them. Chargers also hurting themselves, 10 penalties for 78 yards. Do you notice a thread here? Every week I talk about these teams and all of these flags being thrown. Texans, 9 penalties, 58 yards. Pittsburgh beats Indianapolis on Thanksgiving night. I had a 10-dime play on the Steelers that night. Hey, they were playing a team against the Colts that didn't have Andrew Luck, okay? Steelers still only 7-13 against the spread. Their last 20 as a road favorite, thanks to back-to-back covers the past 2 games at Cleveland, at Indianapolis. And, hey, nothing more you can really say in that game. Washington getting the cover at Dallas on Thanksgiving Day. I used Washington as a free pick that day. Redskins should have won the game, missed 2 field goals, had 505 total yards, but those 2 field goals and going 2 for 5 in the red zone hurt them. Kirk Cousins, another great game, 41 for 53, 449 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's after his 275-yard, 3-touchdown performance against the Packers in the Monday night game. Dallas wins again. That's 10 straight wins. They've covered 9 of those 10. Redskins, 6-2-1 their last 9 games. They covered 7 of those 9 games. They're 5-2-1 their last 8 straight up on the road. They have covered 12 of their last 15 games with a push along the way in regular season action, and they've gone 14-3 in their last 17 games over the total, going over 9 of 11 this season. One thing, though, I did notice they really threw the ball a hell of a lot here in the game. Of course, Dallas took the early lead. You know, Rob Kelly, the rookie running back who had a nice debut against Minnesota, remember, 22 carries, 97 yards, had an even better game against the Packers when he had 24 carries, 137 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Against the Cowboys, only 37 yards on 14 carries. That was the Redskins. Only their second loss this season by more than a 4-point margin. They lost by 5. The other one was in their season opener to the Steelers. And, of course, we ended all with the Detroit Lions, who managed to win on Thanksgiving Day in a game in which they trailed, surprise, surprise, in the fourth quarter. They have trailed in every single game this season in the fourth quarter. They win the game thanks to an ill-advised Sam Bradford play in the fourth quarter late. It was an interception, which they converted on. And the straight-up winner is now 11-0 against the spread in the Lions games this year. That'll do it for this week's edition of your NFL Rearview Mirror Show. Remember, this week's edition of the Countdown to Kickoff show I do with Steve Budin will be available on this same channel sometime late Wednesday, early Thursday morning. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to be notified when the show is posted and available to be viewed. Good luck, everybody.